Lawyers, how does it feel to defend a client who is guilty? Defense lawyers play a crucial part in ensuring justice is done. Let's say an appalling crime is committed and an innocent person is arrested and seen as the main suspect. There would be a Maya whirlwind, and many people react emotionally and think along the lines of this scumbag doesn't deserve a good lawyer. Give him some loser and let the judge and jury crucify him. But then the conviction is worth nothing. Only when a criminal has had every chance and his case has been scrutinized from every angle by a good defense can society be confident in the conviction and that the punishment is just. Not me, but my dad is a veteran criminal defense attorney. Anyway, he puts it this way: the justice system in itself puts an obligation for you to defend your client to the best of his or her ability to do so. And likewise, the prosecution has an obligation to try his or her best to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. On a personal note, he says the pay makes it much easier, but hey, they don't call attorneys blood-sucking parasites for nothing. P.S. I'm studying to be a lawyer too, and my mom is also a practicing attorney. Tongue sticking out. I asked my uncle this. He's been a criminal defense attorney for 20 or so years. You never really defend a client that's guilty, because guilty is a status determined by the law. I don't determine if they're guilty, because I'm not the law, and neither does the law think that they're guilty either up until they're convicted. The moment they actually become guilty, you aren't really defending them anymore, but negotiating for their interests. I used to work closely with a criminal defense lawyer. They weren't thinking in terms of innocent or guilty, but how can I get the best possible outcome for my client? Just because a person was in possession of a small amount of a drug, or they were in a fight, doesn't necessarily mean they need 3+ years in prison. Judges can throw the book at someone if they aren't challenged, but at times the lawyer can negotiate for time served or probation. I'm an attorney, but not the criminal kind. I do evictions. Luckily, over 90% of the time, I know the person has breached their lease and has been given multiple chances to fix the problem. However, there have been a handful of cases where I knew my client, the landlord, was being completely unfair about the situation and wouldn't budge on kicking them out. Times like that make the duty of loyalty suck. I have always said that I honestly believe it would be emotionally harder to be a prosecutor than a defense attorney. My job is simple. I always represent my clients to the best of my ability. It's not my job to win a case. It's the prosecutor's job to prove my client guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. If a guilty client of mine walks, it's because the prosecutor could not or did not do their job of proving him, her guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Plus, I love that my job matters. My representation of a person could determine if they go home and have dinner with their family or spend the rest of their life behind bars. The prosecutor, on the other hand, has to decide what crimes to charge a person with, what offers to make to resolve a case, and what cases to proceed to trial with. If an innocent person goes to prison, that's because a prosecutor made a mistake in pursuing those charges. I think that would be a lot harder to sleep with. People view the court system as some sort of competition where the best lawyer wins. Maybe this is the case, maybe not. Instead, view it as two people who have extensive knowledge of the law attacking an issue from both sides until they meet in a fair middle. The courtroom isn't always so binary. If the defense did nothing, the prosecution would absolutely slay the accused, and there would be no fair treatment. I'm a retired career prosecutor in Ohio. The shoe on the other foot is the horror, the absolute nightmare, at the thought that I may have convicted an innocent person. I put several murderers on death row, but none was ever executed. Appellate court would find some way to avoid the death penalty. Several times, during a trial, I would receive evidence that would make me doubt the defendant's guilt. Case dismissed, just like in my cousin Vinny. I had a criminal law prof who in his response to this question mirrored the top comment in this thread, but also said the only time he ever felt bad about his job is when he was defending a party he believed to be innocent and they got convicted. In that scenario, he didn't just fail them, the entire system did. In the scenario that a guilty person walks free, well then, that's the crown failing. It was an interesting perspective, and one I carry with me. Edit. On mobile. Guilty is decided in court. Usually, your defense attorney really doesn't want to know too much either. They want just enough information to create doubt, or they want to find a feasible excuse to waive you from harsh punishment. It's really more about providing a service based on a constitutional right than anything else. I don't know any attorneys that revel in setting the murderers and rapists of the world free just because they can. My criminal law professor, who is also my advisor, explained it like this. It isn't your job to ask if the person is guilty or not. The jury are the fact finders in the courtroom. When you meet with your client, you ask specific non-incriminating questions to determine what defenses are available to use. If your client begins to incriminate himself, you stop him immediately. If he admits to a crime privately to you, you will then be a witness to perjury during trial if he testifies otherwise. He was a renowned defense attorney in New Jersey who was terminated from the university last year for reasons unknown to us. I suspect it was his unorthodox teaching methods or his short temper. Well, as far as I am concerned, both as a lawyer and a person, is that he has been represented fairly. As any doctor would treat a murderer as best he can, so does a lawyer have to do. Even if he says he is guilty, there is always the chance that he is not, and that's the job for the lawyer to prove it. Bird lawyer here. Most of the time it's okay, but the job has been known to ruffle my feathers. Sometimes clients are guilty, this I can deal with. But when they fly off the handle and get aggressive, it gets to me because there's a pecking order. Two can't play at that game. I'll say, and maybe I don't necessarily represent them as well as I would have done. To be honest, it's distressing and most of my clients wind up behind bars. But I am an assistant for a divorce attorney. I know sometimes that my client is idiot and would not be a good custody for the kid they have. Sometimes my clients are super rich and don't even bother to answer our requests for details, and then blame us for when judges scold them or fine them. It isn't fun, but we do what we do. Not a criminal lawyer, but one of the oldest principles of lawyering, and one that remains extant in many jurisdictions, is the cab rank principle. It remains the case that for barristers you cannot turn down a case in your area of expertise if you're free to work and the fee will be reasonable. Criminals normally get legal aid, so for criminal lawyers, money is being paid by the state. Legal representation isn't about winning or losing. It's about doing the best you can for your client. Whether it's a criminal case or a commercial case, the duty of the lawyer is always to the administration of justice and to their client. But yeah, everybody thinks some of their clients are arseholes. Sorry, it just submitted. But the point I was going to make is you have two people on opposite sides trying to make their points, and that's how you get the closest to the truth. Also, how do you know they really did it? You don't, because neither you nor the prosecutor was there. You're trying to flesh out the amount of evidence against and for your client. I'm not practicing, but I've been asked this question a lot. I see a defense lawyer as defending the law rather than the client. They're there to ensure the law is correctly and fairly applied. Without defense lawyers, the law would be so distorted that many innocent people would be convicted. I don't think I could do the job, but I have a lot of respect for those that do that difficult job. Most of the skeezy high-profile attorneys who defend obviously guilty people do, so just time get their name out there and subsequently make loads of cash on easy DUI cases and the like. There's a couple guys like that in my hometown who jump on every high-profile case they can. Nothing like free advertising on the front page, if the paper. In short, horrible. So I was never a criminal attorney, nor a trial attorney, so I didn't defend anyone guilty of anything. But I used to be an attorney for a Fortune 5 in corporate America. My job included a great deal of working the loopholes, so to speak. That is, I would either set things up or find things that had been set up in deals with clients, business partners, or even our own employees that were advantageous to the company even if they weren't common sense to the deal. So I was never working in defense of the guilty. I was just finding ways to make us technically correct in our dealings, even if we were pragmatically screwing people over. It's not a rewarding job. There's certainly no sense of having contributed anything particularly helpful to anyone. And in the rare times when you do pin a name or a face of someone who gets hurt by having been out-lawyered on a technicality, you feel kind of scummy. That's why I ultimately left that line of work. What annoys me even more about this whole situation is that the people who put you up to this also blame you for the practice. In my experience, they don't out and out say the lawyers made us do it, but whatever scummy thing they want to do will be presented as the company lawyer's plan. Maybe this is true sometimes, but in your case, it seems like it isn't/wasn't. I'm not a lawyer, but my uncle works corporate law for one of the biggest banks in the U.S. I'll keep that secret. To put it bluntly, these companies are always breaking the law, and it is his job to make them seem like the good guys. Needless to say, it is very depressing to him, and he can't stand to stick up for the people he hates, but unfortunately for him, he's very good at it, winky face. I've had to give informal legal assistance to people whose public defenders was so obviously not doing their jobs, even a layman could see it, but the defendant was also guilty as hell by all the evidence stacked against them. All I could do was help make sure the guy got a fair sentence. One of them was a defendant looking at life over a first-time felony drug possession charge because his misdemeanor track record was miles long, it seemed. I knew misdemeanors aren't valid counts towards felonies when it comes to marking someone a career criminal, pointed that out to him, who he ended up pointing that out to his public defender, and he came out with only 10 years, which, as I understand it, is the minimum. He seemed happy about it, considering he was looking at life beforehand. I can't imagine how many injustices like that go on and don't get caught every day either. IMHO, this is 100% how a criminal defense attorney should be. I've been the guilty criminal in this scenario multiple times. From small local misdemeanors to federal felonies. Every good criminal defense attorney I've dealt with, everything from mid-five-figure attorneys to free public defenders, has pretty much had the attitude that they won't try and just make the charges disappear, but they will make sure I get fair treatment and a fair sentencing. Cop here. My home court is one of the busiest in the area. From my experience in court, this is the attitude most PDs have. I've even had PDs come up to me after court if something got thrown out because of a mistake in my investigation or a missing piece of key information in my report and explain why things happened the way they did. Granted, this doesn't happen often because the DA doesn't even usually file cases that aren't a slam dunk. I have respect for most PDs. They have a tough job to do, and most cops, and I imagine most people, think it's an us versus them thing. But typically, the PDs, DDAs, and judges all know each other and even go to lunch together. The DDA knows the PD has a tough job too. Before the case, the PD and DDA might be chatting about the game the night before, but as soon as the judge walks in and sits down, it's all business. Each does his job well. You would never know they were even cordial based on how each operates in the courtroom. Number 5. Cops lie. A lot. I found this out firsthand when my teenage sons got into some trouble. Of course, I was dumbfounded. I had no idea that cops lying was a common thing. How is this okay? Not okay with you and me, but okay with the cops? Okay with the DA? Okay with the judge? These are people's lives they are dealing with. This was a big deal for my sons, having a record, etc. It was like a joke to them, the cops. I'm still so angry about the whole thing. So the cops I've seen lie, not that I'm around as much, but even middle-class me has seen it more than once, seem to have lied because they think it's for the public good. Like, yeah, I know damn well that guy drives drunk all the time, so I'm going to say the bottle was open even when it wasn't. It'll keep him off the road. Or even if he wasn't guilty this time, he's been guilty lots of other times, and he shouldn't be on the street. What annoys me even more about this whole situation is that the people who put you up to this also blame you for the practice. In my experience, they don't out and out say the lawyers made us do it, but whatever scummy thing they want to do will be presented as the company lawyer's plan. Maybe this is true sometimes, but in your case, it seems like it isn't / wasn't. I heard a piece on NPR this past week about the lawyer defending the younger Tsarnaev brother. She wasn't on it specifically, but they talked to a friend of hers on why she takes cases like this, and she has defended many other well-known killers and terrorists. In these cases, there's virtually no chance that there isn't a conviction. It's a widely publicized case, and you won't find many people who don't scoff when you hear reports about the alleged killer because everyone knows they did it. But she's a staunch opponent of the death penalty, and she'll do everything she can to keep her client alive. It's not about defending what they did. It's about ensuring a fair trial and standing up for her belief that the government shouldn't kill people for committing crimes. There are a ton. I know in my jurisdiction, I had a required ethics class in law school, a separate ethics exam outside of law school, and ethics were one of the subjects on the bar exam. Whether you can teach people to act honestly is a separate question, but at least they teach you the rules and underscore their importance. I think that the onus lies on the prosecution to prove that the evidence is correct. The defense is under no obligation to solve a crime or identify an actual culprit. From the way that I understand it, they're there to follow the writ of the law and provide their client with every legal means of defense. Yeah, that's what they teach you in law school. You're not trying to get your client off. You are trying to make sure that the legal process is being as fair as possible vis the rules. And if that just so happens to get your client off, great. But you will have been seen as doing a good job as long as you are diligently working to make sure that she gets the most fair treatment as possible. Please consider subscribing if you enjoyed. Love.